All for One, One for All, or All for One K-pop song. BLACKPINK Rosé's hit song 아파트 featuring Bruno Mars took the world by storm back in October last year. Did you know that 11 people contributed to writing and composing this hit song, and 4 producers took part? In the K-pop industry, it has become common that a whole group of people collaborate on one single song. Let's talk about this interesting trend with our K-pop expert, Jeff Benjamin, who is now connected with us. So welcome back, Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi, thanks for having me again.
Thanks for joining us again. Now, Jeff, before we delve into today's main topic, could you give us a rundown of the latest K-pop trends based on your recent contribution to Billboard? So what are some notable groups and songs that we can mention in the first half of this year?
Yeah, definitely. There's 3 big trends I kind of feel like I need to point out. Is that on one hand is that the rookie boy bands are doing really, really well. We've started in this year so far, the Billboard piece, Best K-pop Songs of the 2025 so far. We have JYP Entertainment's new boy band Kickflip on the list with their very first single, Great. It's a really cool, quirky kind of song. And then we also have a new boy band called Close Your Eyes with their single, All My Poetry, which is kind of an unexpected throwback to 2000s R&B, 90s pop sounds. And that's actually kind of one of the big trends I've sort of noticed, is that there's a lot of nostalgia happening this year as well. Not only is Close Your Eyes here with a very nostalgic song, but you have a group like girl group High Key, who just created a song called Summer Is You, a really just kind of great, nostalgic, feel-good rock pop song that actually reminds me of maybe 10 years ago in K-pop, when I really remember that time. Just happy, lots of good sounds in there. But also there's a lot of experimentation happening. Number 1 on the list was BLACKPINK's Jennie with her single Jennie, like Jennie, of course. And who would have thought a song literally about Jennie that's in half in Korean, half in English would be this global hit, right? But it's being played on US radio, and I think it was a really good experiment that kind of paid off for Jennie, just to create this kind of really great self-signature anthem. We've seen experimental songs from groups like NMIX, ATEEZ, Mark from NCT. So on one hand, there's a lot of groups, looking to the past, but also there's a lot of exciting things looking to the future and being experimental. That with this great rookie class of boy bands with Kickflip, Close Your Eyes, AHOF, New Beat. There's a lot of exciting new boy bands on the horizon. So K-pop's in a really good place, I think.
Okay, so we've got rookies and we've got also many solo songs and also nostalgic songs. Now, let's talk about an interesting way of creating super hits like actually the ones you just mentioned. It's become the norm for a group of artists, songwriters, composers, and producers to get together for a so-called song camp to make a great song. So please, Jeff, tell us about this process.
Definitely. This process isn't necessarily new. It's definitely been happening for a while, but something that's been really great about the way that K-pop works is that, what might happen in America is that there'll be a song camp where they're bringing in songwriters and producers, all to kind of work on music for a specific project or a specific artist album. So you're bringing in all these artists, all these songwriters, maybe just to write for the new Rihanna album, right? But what's great about K-pop and companies, whether it's SM Entertainment and Hybe or Starship or YG Entertainment, they're bringing in all these different creatives, and they can kind of create music for all the different artists at the company. And that's great because all these companies have artists at different places in their careers, different sounds, different messages. So it's really kind of this nice situation that K-pop has kind of fallen into, where they can work with all these different kind of creatives and they can come together to create all kinds of music.
Wow. So you've mentioned, Jeff, major Korean entertainment agencies like Hybe, SM, JYP, YG, and Starship are regularly holding these song camps. Why is that? Please tell us about some of the benefits of this song camp.
Definitely. You're bringing in, right, all these minds, and it's kind of an exciting creative journey because most of the time the labels will house and they'll kind of create a schedule for the songwriters. And it's kind of just this great chance to really work creatively with a bunch of different people. And like I mentioned before, many times these labels will kind of give prompts, give ideas, give kind of, a look ahead of where they're going with their artists, with their companies, whether that's in terms of genre, whether that's in terms of sound. But what's really kind of cool is that, these songwriters and these producers can come together, they can create different kinds of things. And, whether or not a song was meant for one artist, it actually might end up going to a different artist in the company. So it's kind of a really efficient way to kind of really be able to get a lot of different types of styles, a lot of different types of music, all in kind of one investment and go. But you're also not going to necessarily waste a lot of that music. If it doesn't make the Rihanna album, for in my first example, what's kind of cool is that K-pop companies can kind of keep the music, keep it circulating, and kind of find the right time to use a lot of the music that they might have created at these song camps.
Mm. So Jeff, you did mention some of the benefits, overall benefits of this song camp, but I've also heard that these song camps are very positive for especially rookie songwriters and composers as well before they make their debut. So what's your thought on this as well?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think it's really cool that you can have a lot of people to work with, right? Because if you have a group of seasoned songwriters and producers or people who have a style that they might have habits or they might have certain ways that they know really work to create the best songs, you can bring in those kind of rookie songwriters or maybe they're trainees under the company to kind of get a taste and kind of learn more about the process of creating music. So I think that's one of the really positive things here. And we're seeing it more and more for sure, that trainees of future groups that are, whether they're about to debut or they're going to debut, they're kind of getting more involved in the process of these song camps. And I think the power of collaboration is really coming through there.
Now, Jeff, I don't know if this is really a big factor or not, but do you think plagiarism could also be avoided in a better way if multiple people work on one song?
Yeah, I think that's a good point because, on one hand, sometimes, an artist and a creative person, they can get so stuck in their head or they can, have a melody that they might have heard, hummed on a subway years ago that just stuck with them. And it's kind of nice to have other people to bounce your ideas off of, bounce off your work and make sure that, yeah, you're not kind of falling into any difficult territories. There's many amazing artists that can create a whole album by themselves and create entirely original products. But it's always nice to kind of have those collaborators and have someone to kind of double check your work, I guess.
Double check, triple check, quadruple check.
Definitely. And speaking of, many people in music industry working together, it's noticeable that the nationalities also of those involved in these K-pop productions have become very, very diverse. Recent efforts have included songmakers from US, UK, Japan, and also Sweden, Norway, and so many other countries, right?
Good point. And that brings us to our next question, Jeff. Do you think that songs created in this way still have that K-pop feel to them? I mean, what makes K-pop sound like K-pop, even if it's not entirely made by Korean people?
Yeah, it's a really great point. And something that I've always been really key on when it comes to describing K-pop is that, I would argue K-pop doesn't actually have that distinct of a sound in terms of genre when we're thinking of rock music being very focused about guitars and drums, or if you think of EDM being very focused on electronic elements and dance music. There's kind of whether it's Stray Kids, who we have shown, I think that's Wavy actually being shown here, a China-based group, right? Or whether it's Stray Kids or whether it's Did I get that wrong? That's actually NCT. My bad. But yeah, whether it's Stray Kids, Jennie, you can have all different kinds of people kind of coming together. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about K-pop is that it's not defined by a sound or, certain instruments. It's more so defined about the way that the music is seen. I would argue that we tend to see a lot of, K-pop is released in a very certain way, or the visuals are rolled out in a certain way, or they have comebacks and then they are seen on music programs. There's a lot more elements, I think, than just the music itself, right? So what's very cool about these song camps in particular, to bring it back to that, is that you can kind of take different parts of different songs, and maybe there's some Thai inspirations here, there's some Norwegian or Swedish inspirations in the chorus, and all these things come together, and it's still K-pop, because K-pop really is this global mash of sounds that's sort of made for all kinds of listeners and people like that, right?
Now, Jeff, and apart from having these groups of people working on one song, we also see a lot of artists themselves collaborating for songs, just like Rosé for 아파트. But as the number of songwriters increases, doesn't it become a little difficult to earn income from royalties? So do you think there will be more cases of these in the future? And also AI could also play a role in making songs in the future. So how do you see the future in producing songs with this collaboration?
Yeah, I think every situation is different. There's some incredible artists. If you look at a Beyonce album, there was a lot of talk about all the different songwriters involved in her latest album, but no one is questioning that Beyonce is a fantastic artist, right? There are also, on the other side of the spectrum, artists who can create a song, an album, and be the sole songwriter on it and play instruments. I think it's all about the artist's different journey. And of course, naturally, right, the more songwriters that are on a song, the copyright is going to get divided less and less. But if that's what it takes to create a great song, ultimately, shouldn't it be worth it, right? 아파트, of course, is one of the biggest hits of last year and this year, to be honest, and it continues to do well. And I think even though, 11 people is a lot of people to kind of break up the royalties with, you still are going to, if you've really created something great, even if it took 11 people, it still ultimately ends up worth it, right? So I do think that depending on your structure or how you work, you just have to do what's best for the artists themselves. And what's kind of great about Rosé's case, for example, is that, she didn't necessarily start out as, writing all of BLACKPINK's music, but the members got more and more involved, and Rosé eventually put out a solo album where she wrote on every song on the record, and got very personal and was able to share a lot more. So it's definitely a process, and every artist has their own process. So I always say we trust the process for sure.
Okay, well, there is a saying that goes, it takes a village to raise a child. So these days we see it might even take a camp to make a hit song. Well, thank you very much, Jeff, for your insights, and have a great rest of the week.
Thank you, Jeff.
To you guys.
And thank you, Bella. As always, we're going to see you back here soon.
Yes, I'll see you back soon.